Whatever color is staring back at you, whether you tan like a rotisserie chicken left in the sun for 4 hours, or you're the human equivalent of Casper's slightly more anxious cousin, that color is not random. It is not a coincidence. It is not, quote, just genetics in the vague, hand-wavy way your biology teacher said it to end the conversation early. That color is a receipt, a 300,000-year-old receipt from the single longest, weirdest, most dramatic survival negotiation in the history of our species. And the other party in that negotiation? The sun. A giant, flaming ball of nuclear fusion sitting 93 million miles away, radiating UV rays at us with the enthusiasm of someone who does not care, has never cared, and will never care about your well-being. Here's the plot twist nobody puts in the trailer. Every single one of your ancestors, yes, every single one, no matter what you look like today, no matter where your family is from, was black. Not some of them, not the majority, probably. All of them, 100%. If you rewind the clock back roughly 300,000 years to the first Homo sapiens walking around in Africa, there was no such thing as light skin anywhere on planet Earth. It hadn't been invented yet. It wasn't a setting humans came in. So somewhere between everyone on Earth is dark-skinned and there's an entire skincare aisle at Target organized by shade, something happened. Something big. Something that involves vitamin D, cancer, folate, ice ages, farmers who accidentally rewired their own descendants, and one extremely rude star that has never once apologized for any of it. Buckle up, because we're about to find out why your skin looks the way it does. And honestly, it's less beauty and more engineering report. Let's start with the thing everybody gets wrong first. Skin is not wrapping paper. It is not the plastic bag your organs came shipped in. Skin is an organ, your biggest one, actually, and it is running about 47 different jobs at once, none of which you have ever thanked it for. One of its biggest gigs? Bodyguard against UV radiation. UV radiation is invisible, it's relentless, and it is absolutely not your friend, despite what your tan lines might suggest. It breaks chemical bonds. It damages DNA. It causes mutations. And if those mutations pile up in the wrong spot, you get melanoma, one of the nastiest, most aggressive cancers that exists. This is where melanin enters the chat. Melanin is the pigment that gives skin its color, and in the most literal biological sense, melanin is sunscreen. Built in, always on, no reapplying every 2 hours at the beach required. The more melanin you've got, the darker your skin, and the better it blocks UV from punching through to the DNA sitting in your deeper skin layers. So in equatorial Africa, where our species originated, sitting directly under some of the harshest UV radiation on the entire planet, evolution did not hesitate. It looked at the options and said, dark skin, obviously, with the enthusiasm of someone picking the free option in a subscription trial. More melanin meant less cancer, meant longer life, meant a much better shot at surviving long enough to pass your genes on. And that's really all evolution is. It's not an artist. It's not casting a movie based on who looks best. It's a cold, ruthless algorithm running one question over and over across billions of organisms for billions of years. Does this trait help you survive long enough to reproduce? Yes? Keep it. No? Delete it. No refunds. No appeals process. In equatorial Africa, dark skin was a yes every single time. Not a maybe. Not a let's A/B test it. A hard, unblinking yes. But here's where the story stops being simple. Because UV doesn't just attack skin cells. It attacks something else in your body. Something small, invisible, and absolutely critical, especially if you happen to be pregnant. And that detail is about to turn this whole story into something way more complicated than dark skin good, light skin bad. That small, invisible, critically important thing is called folate, a form of vitamin B9 that's cruising through your bloodstream doing quiet maintenance work you never notice. Kind of like the update your phone installs at 3 a.m. without asking permission. Now, you might be thinking, okay, a vitamin, cool. why does this matter for skin color? Here's why it matters enormously, especially if you are pregnant or trying to be. Folate is essential for building the neural tube in a developing embryo. That's the structure that eventually becomes the brain and spinal cord. Without enough folate in the first few weeks of pregnancy, often before a woman even knows she's pregnant, that neural tube can fail to close properly. The results are catastrophic. Severe developmental defects, miscarriage. This is not a maybe you'll feel a little tired vitamin deficiency. This is a life or death one. And UV radiation destroys folate. When UV light penetrates the skin and hits the bloodstream, it breaks those folate molecules apart like it's got a personal vendetta. In a sun-drenched environment like equatorial Africa, no clothing, no shelter, no SPF 50, no such thing as SPF anything, UV exposure was constant, brutal, and unavoidable. So now imagine a population with lighter skin trying to survive under that sun. Less melanin means more UV gets through, means more folate gets destroyed, means more neural tube defects, means fewer surviving babies. Evolution doesn't need a second warning. That's an instant, non-negotiable no on light skin in that environment. So now we've got two completely separate biological threats, skin cancer and folate destruction, and one single solution that fixes both, melanin. Dark skin wasn't just useful in early Africa, it was mandatory, non-negotiable, the evolutionary equivalent of terms and conditions you cannot skip. So dark skin is basically the fully loaded, top-tier, 5-star reviewed model of human skin. It blocks cancer, it protects pregnancies, it's been field tested for hundreds of thousands of years with 0 recalls. So why on earth did it change? Somewhere between 70,000 and 100,000 years ago, small groups of Homo sapiens started drifting out of Africa. Nobody called a meeting. Nobody made an announcement. It was just slow, generational wandering. A group moves a little further than their parents did, their kids move a little further still, and over thousands of years, humans spread through the Middle East, into Europe, across Asia, eventually into the Americas. And as people moved north, the sun didn't change. The sun stayed exactly as indifferent and nuclear as ever, but the angle changed. At higher latitudes, sunlight hits the Earth at a shallower angle, so it has to pass through way more atmosphere to reach you. UV gets filtered out. Winters get long and dark. Skies stay overcast for months at a time. Basically, the UV environment in northern Europe or Siberia looks nothing like the UV environment in equatorial Africa. And suddenly, that same dark skin that had been an unstoppable survival machine became a liability. Not because of cancer. UV was so weak up north that cancer risk dropped dramatically. Not because of folate either. Less UV meant less folate destruction, so that box stayed checked as fine. No, the problem was something else. Something that doesn't get nearly enough credit in this whole story. Vitamin D. Vitamin D gets made in your skin when UVB radiation hits a compound called 7-dehydrocholesterol. Basically, your skin is a solar panel, converting sunlight into an essential nutrient. And vitamin D is not optional, not even slightly. It regulates how your body absorbs calcium and phosphorus. Without it, you could drink a gallon of milk a day and your body still wouldn't absorb the calcium properly. In kids, severe vitamin D deficiency causes rickets. Bones so soft they bow outward, skulls that flatten, growth that stunts. In adult women, it causes a condition called osteomalacia, which softens the pelvic bones. And soft, deformed pelvic bones make childbirth dangerous, sometimes fatally so. We're talking about women dying in labor because their bodies literally couldn't get enough sun. And it doesn't stop at bones. Vitamin D deficiency weakens your immune system, hits muscle strength, affects cardiovascular health, and some research even links chronic deficiency to depression and cognitive decline. When you run low on vitamin D, your body doesn't fail in one neat place. It starts glitching in like 5 departments at once, like a company where IT, HR, and payroll all crash on the same Monday. Now picture a dark-skinned person standing in Northern Europe 40,000 years ago. Their melanin is elite-level, top-of-the-line UV blocking. Perfect for Africa. But their skin can't tell the difference between dangerous UV, please block, and scarce UV, please let it in, we need it. It just blocks. All of it. Which means barely any vitamin D gets made, calcium absorption tanks, bones weaken, and childbirth becomes a gamble nobody wants to take. Dark skin, the undisputed champion in Africa, was quietly becoming a death sentence up north. And evolution, patient, merciless, always running its calculations in the background, was about to flip the script entirely. So mutations that reduced melanin production started popping up in northern populations, the way random mutations always do. No plan, no direction, just biological noise. Except this time, instead of getting deleted by natural selection, they got promoted. People with slightly lighter skin made slightly more vitamin D, had slightly stronger bones, survived childbirth slightly more often, and had slightly more surviving kids. Generation after generation, slightly lighter, slightly lighter, slightly lighter. Like a slow-motion software update rolling out across an entire population over thousands of years, except the developers had no idea they were coding anything. For a long time, scientists assumed this lightening happened gradually, like glacially, hundreds of thousands of years slow. Then, ancient DNA analysis came along and absolutely wrecked that theory. Turns out, early European hunter-gatherers, people who had already been living in Europe for tens of thousands of years, were still noticeably dark-skinned. The most famous example is a specimen called Cheddar Man, who lived in what's now Britain around 10,000 years ago. When scientists sequenced his DNA in 2018, they found he likely had dark to medium dark skin, dark curly hair, and blue eyes. Which sounds like a casting error to modern eyes, because we've been trained to assume blue eyes only come as a package deal with extremely pale skin. 10,000 years ago, apparently, nobody got that memo. The pale, burns-in-12-minute skin we associate with, say, classic Northern European features, that only became widespread in the last 6,000 to 8,000 years. In the entire 300,000-year run of Homo sapiens, that is, the last 3%. That's not ancient history. That's practically a rounding error. Blue eyes and pale skin are basically the iPhone 15 of human traits. Everyone assumes they've been around forever, but they're actually shockingly recent. So what happened 6,000 to 8,000 years ago to hit the fast-forward button? The Neolithic Revolution, the switch from hunting and gathering to farming. And almost nobody talks about what this diet change did to skin color. Hunter-gatherers ate a genuinely stacked diet. Fatty fish, organ meats, shellfish, foods absolutely loaded with vitamin D. Once populations shifted to farming, their diet became mostly cereal grains, wheat, barley, oats, rye. Basically an all-carb menu with none of the vitamin D backup they used to have. Their dietary vitamin D didn't dip. It collapsed, like a startup that burned through its funding in one bad quarter. Suddenly, entire populations were relying almost completely on whatever their skin alone could make. And if their skin was still on the darker side, that wasn't enough. So the pressure to lighten up, literally, intensified fast. There's a second ingredient that sped this up even more: population density. Farming communities weren't small, scattered bands of 50 people wandering around. They were big, dense, and sedentary, connected to networks of other villages. And when a helpful mutation shows up in a huge, interconnected population, it spreads fast, like a viral trend hitting every group chat at once, instead of just one friend telling one other friend. Small hunter-gatherer bands spread mutations slowly. Big farming villages spread them at lightning speed. Combine diet suddenly missing vitamin D with population dense enough to spread a helpful mutation in a few generations, and you get exactly what the fossil and DNA record shows: a sudden, fast, visible wave of depigmentation across Europe. Here's something that genuinely blows people's minds when they hear it for the first time. Skin color isn't controlled by one single gene. There's no dark skin gene fighting a light skin gene for dominance like some genetic wrestling match. It's polygenic, dozens of different genes working together, controlling how much melanin gets made, what type, how it's distributed, how skin reacts to sun exposure over time. And here's the part that should genuinely give you chills. East Asians and Europeans both evolved lighter skin than equatorial Africans, but they used almost entirely different genes to get there. Different populations, different continents, different molecular toolkits, same final answer. Scientists call this convergent evolution, separate populations independently stumbling onto the same solution. When evolution invents the same fix multiple times, from scratch, using completely different tools, that's about as strong a signal as biology ever sends that this trait really, really mattered. And while we're deep in this genetic rabbit hole, let's talk about blue eyes, because this one is wild. Every single person alive today with blue eyes is descended from one person, one individual, one mutation, somewhere near the Black Sea, roughly 6,000 to 10,000 years ago. Before that person existed, literally every human on Earth had brown eyes. Brown, 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 all the way back. Then one mutation dialed down melanin production specifically in the iris, and it spread, likely riding along genetically with the same skin-lightening variants that were already under heavy selection pressure at the time. So a trait we treat like it's ancient and eternal, something people have used for centuries to sort and stereotype each other, is younger than farming, younger than Stonehenge, younger than domesticated horses. The normal we think we're looking at, it's still under construction. So let's zoom all the way out and look at the whole picture, because it's honestly kind of beautiful once you see it clearly. Skin color, the thing that has been used to sort humans into boxes, build hierarchies, justify horrors, and start arguments that have lasted literal centuries, is, at its biological core, just a UV calibration system, a dial, a setting. Your body's best ancestral guess at how much sun protection you need based on the latitude your distant ancestors happen to end up in, the diet they happen to eat, and the sun they happen to live under. That's it. That's the whole thing. Not a hierarchy, not a ranking, a setting, tuned by environment over hundreds of thousands of years, the same way you'd adjust the brightness on your phone depending on whether you're indoors or standing in direct sunlight. Light skin isn't better in any universal sense. Drop it back in equatorial Africa and it's a liability. More UV punching through, more DNA damage, more cancer risk, more folate destruction, fewer surviving pregnancies. And dark skin isn't primitive or unevolved. It's the original, the baseline, the factory setting every single human being started with. If anything, lighter skin is the new update, the patch, the variation that got installed later for a very specific environment. And here's the detail that should honestly stop you in your tracks. The exact same sun pushed different populations in completely opposite directions. It made some people evolve more melanin to survive its intensity, and it made other people evolve less melanin because they desperately needed more of its limited light. The sun never picked a side. It never had a preference. It just radiated, indifferently, the same way it has for 4.5 billion years, and let evolution sort out the consequences on the ground. Which means humanity built entire civilizations worth of prejudice, slavery, colonialism, and social hierarchy on top of what is, biologically speaking, a vitamin D problem, a calcium absorption issue, a folate protection mechanism. We turned a sunlight calibration setting into a moral ranking system. And nature, if it could laugh, would probably find that absolutely absurd. And this story isn't even over. Human evolution didn't stop the moment we invented houses and grocery stores. It's still running, quietly, in the background, on a timescale too slow for any of us to notice in one lifetime. The pressures that shape skin color are technically still out there. We've just muffled them. We've got vitamin D supplements now, sunscreen, fortified milk, electric lighting. So let's zoom all the way out and look at the whole picture, because it's honestly kind of beautiful once you see it clearly. Skin color, The thing that has been used to sort humans into boxes, build hierarchies, justify horrors, and start arguments that have lasted literal centuries is, at its biological core, just a UV calibration system, a dial, a setting. Your body's best ancestral guess at how much sun protection you need based on the latitude your distant ancestors happened to end up in, the diet they happened to eat, and the sun they happened to live under. That's it. That's the whole thing. Not a hierarchy, not a ranking, a setting, tuned by environment over hundreds of thousands of years, the same way you'd adjust the brightness on your phone depending on whether you're indoors or standing in direct sunlight. Light skin isn't better in any universal sense. Drop it back in equatorial Africa and it's a liability. More UV punching through, more DNA damage, more cancer risk, more folate destruction, fewer surviving pregnancies. And dark skin isn't primitive or unevolved. It's the original, the baseline, the factory setting every single human being started with. If anything, lighter skin is the new update, the patch, the variation that got installed later for a very specific environment. And here's the detail that should honestly stop you in your tracks. The exact same sun pushed different populations in completely opposite directions. It made some people evolve more melanin to survive its intensity, and it made other people evolve less melanin because they desperately needed more of its limited light. The sun never picked a side. It never had a preference. It just radiated, indifferently, the same way it has for 4.5 billion years, and let evolution sort out the consequences on the ground. Which means humanity built entire civilizations worth of prejudice, slavery, colonialism, and social hierarchy on top of what is, biologically speaking, a vitamin D problem, a calcium absorption issue, a folate protection mechanism. We turned a sunlight calibration setting into a moral ranking system. And nature, if it could laugh, would probably find that absolutely absurd. And this story isn't even over. Human evolution didn't stop the moment we invented houses and grocery stores. It's still running, quietly, in the background, on a timescale too slow for any of us to notice in one lifetime. The pressures that shape skin color are technically still out there. We've just muffled them. We've got vitamin D supplements now, sunscreen, fortified milk, electric lighting,